Okay, we're going to get started here. I'm sorry for starting a couple of minutes late. So thanks for joining us for today's webinar. For those of you who haven't been part of any of our programs that we've done before, we're doing this webinar series co-created with the heads of other Friends schools to identify different topics that would help facilities and business managers learn from each other and from outside professionals. And we're going to focus on this topic as our kickoff related to energy use in facilities, because it's really benchmarking your energy performance and measuring your energy performance is really the first step that you need to take in understanding your energy use and where your opportunities are. So we'll talk about how we can do different energy assessments using data collection and data analysis. And if any questions come up during the program, please go ahead and type your questions into the Google document that's linked below in the description, or use the chat function on the right side of your screen. I'm not sure exactly that I'll be able to see it all during the presentation, but if I can't, I will answer questions at the end. So I think this part of the presentation is going to be about 25 or 30 minutes. And then when we're done, we'll have time for questions, and hopefully I'll have answers to your questions. So let's just dive right in now. So the agenda here, really to understand why it's important to focus on energy. We're not going to go into this too deeply, because we found that most of our school constituents and stakeholders here understand that they do need to address energy use in their schools. And so, but we will get into it, at least to give some foundation and to give some talking points when talking to a board of trustees or a development group that's helping to raise funds for your school. What are the best opportunities for saving energy in a commercial building? Schools are considered a commercial building as opposed to a residential or industrial building. But in your school building, what are your best opportunities? And how do you monitor and benchmark your energy performance? And how can that help you actually reduce your energy consumption? And just that pathway, then once you've done this foundational work, what's your path to a better environmental performance for your facilities? So our organization is called FIRST, and that stands for a Friends Initiative to Reach Sustainability Together. We've been supported by the Friends Council on Education throughout our process, and have a couple of leaders that have brought us to this point where we're actually doing some pilot programs in Quaker schools. We've worked with 4 schools in the spring this year, and we're into the summer. And I think we're looking to work with 4 more for the fall, and put some kind of program and pathway together that really works for the Quaker schools, knowing what challenges they might have with funding and other things like that. So my name is Paul Spiegel, and I'm the president of Practical Energy Solutions. So I just thought a quick introduction so that you know my expertise and background, and kind of show that I have a broad range of experience here. I founded the company 12 and a half years ago, and we work with primarily schools and municipalities to help them assess their energy use, figure out some realistic goals that they can reach in reducing energy consumption and reducing environmental impacts of using energy. And that's typically through conservation and efficiency, and then eventually renewable energy as well. And so you really need to be on the right path so that you don't take any steps backwards in your process, maybe make a wrong decision and end up stuck with a piece of equipment that is a key energy user in your facility, and be stuck with that for 15 to 20 years. So we have this broad range of experience and expertise that we bring to the table. A wide range of clients, many school districts and schools, some Quaker schools that we haven't listed there, but we are the energy consultant for the city of Philadelphia. We've worked for QVC and some other large organizations here in this area. And again, many schools that we work with. So why focus on energy? The obvious thing that everybody seems to connect to is this idea of reducing their energy costs, their operating costs. And so that's pretty standard, and I think everybody's aware of that. Environmental and health benefits. There are environmental impacts to using energy. Obviously, anything that we burn to produce energy is having an environmental impact, not just when we burn it, but typically just discovering and recovering that resource, getting it out of the ground has a huge environmental impact as well. And so as we've talked to different Quaker schools and even non-Quaker schools, they've typically had a stakeholder group that's really interested in reducing environmental impacts of running their schools. But even with that focus, even at a Quaker school, there's still budget concerns. And so it still goes back to that first bullet point. Okay, yes, it's great. We're going to reduce our impacts, but how much are we going to save financially, and what's the cost to us financially to do this? And many projects actually pay for themselves. And so, and that's kind of a rare thing in the facilities management or just property management. When you're investing in your facilities, not everything you do actually has a financial return immediately. It's more just developing facilities that you can have classes in and that you can use for your operations. Often what we do to optimize the energy performance of systems in buildings actually reduces the runtime of that equipment. And so if you're running it less, it's actually going to need a little less maintenance, because the maintenance is typically based on run hours. And it's all going to extend the service life of the equipment too. If you think about it, if you're running an air conditioning system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's not going to last as long as a system that you're only running 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so there's some sustainability in that, where you don't have to throw a failing system into a landfill and then have a new system manufactured for you quite as often if you're managing the performance and the run times on that equipment. Almost every area of the U.S., there's utility rebates and different incentives and even some grant programs that you can tap into. There's a little photo on the right here, which is a picture of Energy Star, an Energy Star label that you can get for your building. So you can actually get your building certified and get this Energy Star award. There are other types of things that you can get as well. Also, when we look at energy performance, we're talking to a lot of our clients now about resilience, and what that means is really this ability to recover from any kind of natural disaster. The timing, if you look at all of the impacts of Hurricane Florence, it's just a repeat of what New Jersey and New York went through with Hurricane Sandy. They lost critical infrastructure. They lost the primary utility lines going to a lot of towns, and they were without power for some of them for weeks and even months. And so having some kind of plan that reduces your energy consumption and then allows you to build or to buy a smaller backup generator or other backup equipment is a really good investment these days. It's something that'll keep you from losing the use of your facilities for extended periods. And there are huge opportunities in reducing building energy use. We waste about 30% of the energy use in our buildings here in the US. So we're going to look at benchmarking our energy performance. And the reason we're doing this is to figure out how we're doing so far. It gives us a metric that we can use. So having some type of benchmark allows you to not just track your energy use, but also your performance against some kind of standard. And so if your benchmark shows that you're not performing as well as the average school out there, then maybe you have a number of high payback opportunities that you can implement and take care of reducing your energy consumption. If you're energy performance is really favorable as compared to the average for K through 12 schools, then maybe you don't have a lot of opportunity, and maybe there's just some tweaks that you can do, some low cost things just to optimize your performance a little bit. So what is benchmarking? It's typically reducing your energy use, converting all of your energy use like natural gas, oil, if you buy steam off a central system, electricity, convert all of that to BTUs and then divide it by the square footage of your building or your buildings. And that gives you a kBTU per square foot. Just pulling a number off of a school that we recently benchmarked, they were using 185,000 BTUs per square foot, kind of corrected. That's corrected for the size of the building, obviously. So a larger building, while it uses more energy, those BTUs per square foot allow you to compare it to different size buildings. It's like getting your cholesterol tested. If someone told me my cholesterol level was 200, but didn't really compare it to any standard, then it's not really telling me a whole lot. And it could be that 200 is a great number. And actually, I think 20 years ago, 200 was great. And now if your cholesterol level's 200, you have to go on some kind of pharmaceutical to reduce your cholesterol. So, but for buildings, we have some standards that are based on databases of similar buildings. And so when we benchmark schools, we're benchmarking it against a database of school buildings throughout the US. And we actually do some corrections or normalization on that performance. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So the primary benchmarking tool that we use is Energy Star's Portfolio Manager. It's a free tool at energystar.gov. So anybody can log into that tool and start to add in information about their building or buildings. And you can compare your energy performance to a database of other schools. They were using a 2003 survey and database up until 3 weeks ago, when they jumped ahead, and they're still using a somewhat old database. It's called the CBEX 2012, the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey. And so a lot of the benchmark scores went down a few weeks ago because the new database is based on slightly more efficient buildings from 2012 as compared to an average building in 2003. So Portfolio Manager, I mentioned it's a free tool, compares your building to a database that's national, all the way across the US, hundreds of buildings in this database. And you put in certain characteristics of your building that allows the program to automatically correct for things like how many students you have in the school and what hours they're occupied. You put in your zip code and it automatically pulls in the nearest weather data and corrects for weather. So it's tough comparing a building in Florida against a building in Vermont because they have a different heating and air conditioning kind of profile. And so this actually corrects for different weather conditions. Number of computers has an impact. Obviously the square footage, so it can compute the BTUs per square foot. Types of use. There's other elements as well, things like walk-in refrigerators and what percentage of your building has cooling and what percentage is heated, things like that. And it actually gives you a score of 1 to 100. And so if your score is 50, it means you're exactly average as compared to this database. If your score is 90, you're better than 90% of other similar uses, other school buildings throughout the US, corrected for all of those items that are shown above, the occupancy, weather, computer, number of computers, things like that. And then once you have your score, you can actually generate a statement of energy performance, and it shows what your CO2 emissions are, and it shows it for a 12-month period. And so if you're continuously tracking your energy use in Portfolio Manager, We have some clients that have been tracking. We've been tracking for them since 2008, 2009, and we set the baseline year, let's say at 2008, and then we can take any 12-month period and compare it to any 12-month period and compare it to that baseline and show how much, what percentage reduction or increase you've had in energy use per square foot, and what changes you've had in your score, that 1 to 100 score. And then you can generate a statement of energy performance report right in Portfolio Manager, and it'll show that comparison to whatever base year you chose. Like I mentioned, that's at energystar.gov. So there's a summary here of energy use, and these are the different categories that you can actually benchmark. So educational facilities, I think the yellow is the 2003 average for each of those categories. The blue line is the 2012 average. So I think 3 weeks ago, most of our school clients saw their scores drop by about 15 to 17 points because of the change in the database. This is part of that performance report. There shows a rating kind of at the bottom left, just to the right of the December 2011. The current score was 89. And if you go up to the actually, that was for December 2011. This report was from June 2012. And up in the upper right corner, it shows a current rating of 92. The baseline rating, the base year before they started implementing different energy projects, was 58. So they were slightly above average. Now they're at a 92, and so they're doing a lot better. The greenhouse gas emissions are down significantly. You can see that their energy use has dropped by 31%. That's right in the bottom and the center, 31%. And the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is on the right at the bottom, 210 metric tons of CO2 per year. And these are the space attributes that you actually have to put in for a school. They change here and there, and so they do update this at times. So you put in the floor area in square feet. Is it used on weekend? Number of PCs, presence of cooking facilities, percent heated, percent cooled. Is it a high school building? That changes some of the energy performance normalization as well. Now, one thing we're finding is that many cities across the country are actually passing ordinances that require building owners to benchmark their energy use in Portfolio Manager and report that energy use to the city. Here in the city of Philadelphia, which is local here, they passed this ordinance in 2012. And after 2 years of reporting their energy use to the city started disclosing to the public the energy performance of every building over 50,000 square feet. So people are considering what school to go to, may be interested in their environmental stewardship and want to see what their energy performance is. People are thinking of leasing office space, can now look and see what that office that they're considering, what their energy performance looks like. And if they want to locate in an Energy Star certified building, then they'll look for a building that has a score of 75 or higher. If your score is 75, you're eligible to apply for an Energy Star award, or what they call an Energy Star label for your building. And it's something you can put right in the front lobby, and it gives you some notoriety for your awareness and addressing of energy use in your facilities. So if you have a low score, even though that's a bad thing, it does mean you have a lot of opportunities to improve. So there's some things you can invest just a tiny amount of money in that will actually have a great return on investment, mainly on operations and management of your heating and air conditioning and your lighting and other systems that use energy. And so those tend to be pretty low cost, but they can have a pretty big impact on your energy use and your energy cost and very quickly. And we've had some projects where a client paid us to do some to provide some guidance in what to do with some of their building systems, and the services that we provided were paid for out of the energy savings within 4 or 5 months. And then after that time, all of that energy savings and the financial savings that they had could be rolled into either their primary mission, which is teaching the students in their school, or it could be invested into other energy projects and maybe larger and larger capital upgrades when they're needed. You don't necessarily do capital upgrades just because your equipment isn't the most efficient. If that equipment is only 7 or 8 years old, you're not going to jump in and make that a priority. Your priority tends to be replacing systems that are end of life and that you have to replace anyway. So, like I said, someone with a score over 75 can apply for the Energy Star label, and if they're in a location, I think there are now about 16 or 17 cities across the country that require energy benchmarking and disclosure. California actually requires it statewide. I think Montgomery County, Maryland requires it throughout the entire county. New York City requires the energy benchmarking. They also require a periodic energy audit of every building over 50,000 square feet. I think it's every 3 to 5 years. You have to do an energy audit and turn it in, and that actually becomes public record. So people can see what your opportunities are, but even better, you can see what your opportunities are to do better. There's also something called Target Finder. If you're designing a new building, it can actually tell you, based on your building design, what your score, Energy Star score would be. And so you want to make sure you're talking to your designers and saying, I want to make sure that this building is designed to earn that Energy Star label. And that's actually an award you get, this building, a label for your building designed to earn the Energy Star. And then in the years after that, then you can actually qualify for the Energy Star Performance Award as well. So after benchmarking, what do you do then? What do you use that information for? Well, if you have a low to medium score, you definitely want to have someone come in and assess your opportunities for you. It's typically not a huge cost, and it often has some operational changes you can make, as well as capital investments that you might be making anyway. Many of the schools that we go into, they have multiple buildings. They'll have at least 1 or 2 that have a boiler that's getting to end of life, or a cooling system that's not operating properly, or that's on its last legs. And so that's really the time to invest in something that's high efficiency. And again, you're using that benchmarking information to guide you and find where your opportunities are. The benchmarking information tells you have opportunities, but it doesn't tell you what systems in your building are using the energy. And that's what the energy audit tends to do. They can tell you, okay, 42% of your energy use is in heating and air conditioning and ventilation, 30% is in lighting, 10% in computer equipment, and let's say 3% in domestic hot water for people washing their hands and taking showers, things like that. So once you've identified some projects, it's worth looking for rebates and maybe low interest loans for energy type projects. And then you want to make sure you at least look at those capital upgrades for things that are near end of life, because typically the systems that you spend a lot of capital dollars on are the systems you're going to be using for 15 to 20 years. And so you want to make sure you're making a smart decision on that. Energy prices can fluctuate in a large way over time, and I haven't met anyone that's been accurately predicting energy prices over the long term, because there are so many variables that affect the prices. And so, and also you may be stuck with equipment that's having a really negative impact on the environment because of all the energy it's using. And so you really want to make that long-term decision and do what you can to do your best on your energy performance. And then as you make improvements or changes to the operations, every month you put your energy bill into Portfolio Manager, and it gives you a score for the previous 12 months. And so it's like a moving average of 12 months. And when you put in your September utility bills, you'll have a score that goes through August, and goes from the previous 12 months all the way through the end of August. So you track your performance. And then if you have been able to reduce that energy footprint, maybe even convert things like natural gas boilers or oil boilers to electric heat and electric, something like heat pumps or geothermal or VRF systems. Those are all electric systems. They're efficient. And because they're electric, you can actually use solar or wind power to operate those systems, where if you're investing in natural gas, there's really nothing you can do to use renewable energy to offset any of that natural gas use. And so it's something that we're trying to get Quaker schools to look at, is this idea of electrification, so that you can at least purchase renewable energy, if not install solar right on your property. So something important for us to think about. And this is what I mentioned before, just knowing how your building's using energy. I'll go through this quickly. I have about 7 or 8 minutes left on this part of the presentation. So just doing a utility bill analysis. It's a pretty simple part of an energy audit, but understanding where your building or buildings are using energy, not just what systems in the building are using energy, but what months are you using the energy. And so this chart here, it shows 2 years of energy use. And this was for a client that told us, we think our biggest issue is how much electricity we're using in the summer. And, we really want to address that and focus on that. And when we did the utility bill analysis, it showed that their main energy use by far was in the winter months. The summer, many of their buildings, they had 22 buildings on their campus. Many of their buildings were shut down for the summer, so there wasn't much going on there during the summer. And they had a central steam plant that had a lot of leaks in it, a lot of issues with steam traps. And so it was running really inefficiently. And so the real opportunity was improving the heating performance, the heating system performance on the campus. And that's what we addressed right out of the gate. But there's a lot of things you can figure out just from doing that easy utility bill analysis. And so once you've done that, you come in and look at different operational things that you can do, make sure systems aren't running at night and on weekends when the school's closed. We found some schools that had circulation pumps running all summer, even though the buildings were closed, circulating what would be, let's say, hot water in the boiler loop or chilled water in the cooling loop, and just circulating that water even though the boiler was off and the chiller was off because there was no one in the building. Getting the set points right, making sure things are running when they need to, even getting the occupants to understand how they impact energy performance. On that pie chart I showed, computers and office equipment were 13% of the energy use. And so having some kind of policy for managing office equipment can have a big impact on your energy use as well, and getting people to contribute by managing their own equipment a little bit better. Maintaining your equipment better actually helps the energy performance as well. So an important thing to focus on your maintenance of any equipment that's a high energy user. And typically these operational improvements, they have the biggest impact if you have a facility that's not operating 24/7, because we're finding that things were left on at night and on weekends that we can shut off. If it's a 24/7 facility, we can't really shut things off. So they're just going to have to continue to run 24/7. And there are actually software programs out there and kind of data analysis programs out there that you can connect to your heating and air conditioning system that'll tell you when something is going wrong or when something's going bad. And I'll use this example. This is just an example from my house, and I hope the colors are rendering correctly, because it's the only way I'm going to be able to explain this. So this is a chart. My house has 2 electric meters. One is just for the hot water heater, for showers, dishwasher, sinks, and the other meter is the rest of the house. And so I replaced my electric resistance hot water heater with a high efficiency heat pump hot water heater. So that kind of magenta, purplish, reddish line on the left side of every stack of lines, that's my old hot water heater. And it was using, that first month of May, it used over 400 kilowatt hours. And it probably averaged about 350 kilowatt hours a month throughout the year. I replaced that in, I think it was May of 2011. Sorry, May of 2012. And so you can see that the energy performance improved May, June, July, August. I was under 100 kilowatt hours on that heat pump hot water heater. So less than half what I'd been using previously. And September was even better, where that yellow, the brighter yellow line next to the magenta line, it's showing it's under 100, where the magenta line is almost at 300. And so I was going along like that, and I'm an energy geek, I admit it. Tracking this in my house. I did other improvements in the house that were picked up by the other meter as well, using a high efficiency heat pump. But just having this data available, it's just an electric meter, and having the data available showed me that in that light blue line, starting in September, that suddenly the energy use jumped up on that heat pump hot water heater. And I thought, okay, maybe the kids were actually taking showers more. I had 2 teenage boys, and maybe they had actually, cleaned up their act. They had girlfriends, and so maybe they were required to take showers. October, November, it was still high, and then it got even higher in December, January, and it was actually performing about like what a standard electric resistance hot water heater, how that would operate. So we finally got it fixed. We had 2 people come out and look at it. They said it's still working, so I don't know what the problem is and why you're concerned about the energy use. But I ended up calling the warranty department, and they sent someone out. It was still under warranty, and they fixed it in May, early June, and that's that orangish line. For 2013, 2014, they found that the heat pump mechanism had failed, but so it defaulted to electric resistance heat for the hot water. And so it was operating exactly like a standard, cheap, low efficiency electric domestic hot water heater. And so it was still providing hot water. I never would have known anything was wrong, and I would have gone 15 years just running it in electric resistant mode, not knowing that the heat pump had failed. Instead, because I had this meter data, I could see, hey, there's something wrong, knew to look at it. I got free work done. They replaced all the heat pump elements, and now it's back in that orangish line. It's back to running at better than 60% savings from my original hot water heater. The other thing you want to do if you're doing anything around energy is track how you're doing. So this was a Quaker school that we worked with, and we were tracking. We set a baseline in 2007, and we've been working with them now for 11 years. But this was just a year into this was 2010. So this was 3 years into our program, and they paid us, I'm going to say, about $28,000 to do this operational study. And all we did was get things to shut off when they needed to, when they were supposed to. And over those years that we worked with them, they saved over $100,000 just investing $28,000 in services. The chart in the middle shows the kind of lime green as the baseline year, and then that same month in the actual year, showing how their costs had gone down. And there's a monthly percentage savings, which is the blue chart. So there were months that they saved 25% just by managing their facilities better. And this, I'm going to take this out and not talk about capital investments at this point. I already did a little bit. So I want to wrap this up and see if I can actually find out if there are questions that were put in the chat room. So this is just the last, maybe the second to last element I'm going to hit before I wind up. So this was a project that we did here that was funded by an energy efficiency fund. They were able to get 3.5% interest on their loan because they were saving more than 25% of the energy in the building. And some of the local energy finance agencies have some funding that allows them to buy down the interest rate if people are investing in energy efficiency. So here there was a project cost of $250,000 to replace their heating, air conditioning, and lighting. They got a rebate from the local utility that paid $25,000, so their net cost was $225,000. The annual lighting savings was $25,000. Annual HVAC was $20,000, so that's $45,000 a year they were saving, which came to $3,750 per month. I did round off a bunch of these numbers. The monthly loan payment at 3.5% they borrowed 100% of the project cost was only $2,200. So they were actually netting $1,500 per month in cash flow with no money out of pocket by reducing their energy bills through investing in energy efficiency. So every year they were saving $18,000. And after they paid off the loan, on top of the loan amount, they actually we're going to save $183,000 in addition to the paying off the loan. So it makes a lot of financial sense when you find the right project. So benchmark your buildings, figure out what your performance is. If you have low to medium scores, hire someone to assess your facilities and figure out where your opportunities are, and then start chipping away at them. Maybe develop a long-term plan as well. And that's something that we do with a lot of our school clients. We did actually some pilot audits for a number of schools here in the area this spring: Westchester Friends, Media Providence, Plymouth Meeting, and Lansdowne Friends. And we thank them for participating, and we're hoping to bring some more into this program shortly. And the main things that we found, there were heating and air conditioning systems at end of life. There were lighting systems that were old, inefficient lighting systems, building envelope, windows and roofing and things like that. Plug loads, the office equipment, and the policies. They said they wanted us to help them draft an employee policy on managing energy, and then having this long-term interest and investment in renewable energy. So questions, like I said, I'll minimize this screen and see if I can find the chat area. And if I can't, I apologize, but I'm going to do the best I can here. And that's not really working here. And I apologize, I can't actually find the chat area. So I think at this point, I'm going to go back to that screen, and I'll have my email address. If you have any questions, just email me, and you can let me know what you want to know about. So there it is, pspiegel@practicalenergy.net. There's some other people that set this up. You can also forward questions through them. And so I'm going to log off on this broadcast now, and thank you for being part of it.